the news media versus the government. It's happening now, and in this documentary, 1,000 Cuts, it's detailed and it's frightening. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am pleased to have on the program here Ramona Diaz. How are you doing today, Ramona?
I'm fine. How are you doing, Chris? Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show. And your documentary, which is so remarkable because it's not just a documentary about the Philippine President Duterte. Am I pronouncing that correct? Duterte. That's right. Duterte. Yeah. How did I get Duterte?
It's how you see it. Yeah, it's Duterte. Yeah.
You follow Maria Ressa and her media outlet. Is it the Rappler online?
Rappler.
Right? Yeah. Rappler. This movie, this documentary plays like a thriller. It's like one of those amazing thrillers. The way that you reveal all of this information and Maria's story. How did you get involved? Because I see a lot of different documentaries, but I have not seen a documentary recently where I feared for the life of the filmmaker. And I felt that way. I felt that way when I was watching your documentary. It's incredible, the access that you had. The story is just so remarkable. How did you get to know Maria, gain her trust, and then tell this story and keep your life intact?
Okay. Well, my first interest really in the Philippines under Duterte was the drug war, right? Because I started seeing all these horrific pictures, and then, there's pictures that you really can't avert your gaze, and it sticks with you. And I've made so many stories. I mean, I make films about the Philippines in this country. So, but by the time I got to the Philippines, a lot of people were making stories about the drug war, and a lot of them have since come out, right? And so I started looking around. I said, okay, there's another story here. What is it? And it was Maria. Maria was speaking out so loudly against the president, calling him on the numbers of the drug war. But more than that, she was also talking about disinformation and connecting the drug war, impunity with disinformation. I thought, oh my God, that's really interesting. Maria was talking about Facebook, drug war, fake news, all that in 2016, right? When no one was really questioning it in 2016. Right. So I thought that's so interesting because it makes the story more global, right? And so I approached her, and because Maria is a journalist, so she understands story and the power of story. And because they were so beleaguered and such the in Duterte's crosshairs, that Rappler couldn't really cover themselves. So she understood that there was value in me covering it just for posterity. If anything happens, she understood the documentation of what happened in her life as it happened. And that's why I think she gave me access and more access. That's what happens if you stick around longer. She's a journalist. She's used to breaking news. She's used to people helicoptering in and then leaving when nothing is happening in her life. But I stuck around. And when everyone would leave the room and I'd be the only one there, me and my crew, she'd be like, "You're still here?" I said, "Yeah, this is what we do. This is why it's different from breaking news or journalism, right? Because we stick around until we, until you trust us and you understand what it is we're really doing." And so that's how that began.
Well, Maria's story is just incredibly inspirational, and what I fear is what's happened to her, being sued and being persecuted. I feel this could happen here. You don't overtly say that. You don't ever overtly come out and say that per se. But I get the feeling when I'm watching this going like, this is us in a very short period of time. There's an amazing section in the documentary where Maria explains, and you do these graphics where you lay it out very simply how fake news is created and how this confusion happens on Facebook. I've never seen it laid out, that argument, or laid out so simply. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. That is the magic of Maria. She explains it so clearly, right? That you can grasp it. I mean, because she has always said it isn't about content. Because if you go after content, that is a whack-a-mole game, right?
Mhm.
Put it out here, it goes out. It's like fire. It's everywhere. So she looks at it in terms of networks of disinformation. And so she started following networks and realized that when she started becoming a victim of trolling, right?
Mm.
She realized that it was armies of a combination of fake accounts, and they knew it was fake because it had one or two followers or friends, and they would follow each other, a combination of that and influencers, right, who would amplify the message. And those like a few number of accounts would affect like 3 million other accounts, and it spreads like wildfire. And because like you know uh hatred, right, and anger, they spread faster on social media. You share that quicker than good news. So it spreads so fast that even if you take it back and say, take it off social media, it's useless, right? Because it's already out there. You're never gonna like reach the same people the second time around to say, no, 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 that was fake. No, you'll never do that. So she was saying it's not content, it's really about looking at the DNA of the platforms. The micro targeting and how we live in silos. That's what she's questioning, which is so it's so clear the way she thinks about it. And so we tried to honor that by making these graphics that unpack it for you in this very clear and cogent way,
It-
hopefully.
it's a very powerful part of the documentary. I almost feel, in a sense, that could be its own documentary unto itself, because it's so. I mean, we live. We're coming up on an election right here in the United States. And I feel we're in for a 2.0 version. Everything is so polarized. We can't agree on masks. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous.
I know.
But I feel like your doc did such a great job of that. I wonder what your personal feelings are about social media, knowing that like such few accounts could have that much of an impact.
It's scary. I've wanted to get off of social media for a long time, but I mean, I'm a filmmaker. It's very much a part of how I get my films out there. It helps me on the one hand, but on the other hand, it is so. I know I'm a target of fake news. At first, of course, you think never, right? You're a critical thinker. You're a critical reader. You will never be a victim of fake news, but you are because you share it immediately, and you're like, so now I stop and think and read and say, should I share it? Should I not? Should I question? But in the beginning, right, you're just sharing, and it's terrific. And I think to think of they say that older folks like millennials and digital natives, what they call the digital natives, are
Mhm.
less prone to being victims of fake news. They know
Mm.
what's going on, right? But it's really the older folks, right? Especially like older like the core audience of Fox, right?
Mhm.
They're the ones that are really, really victims of fake news and believe it and share and do all that. I still though, I still believe in the good it can do, because it is a democratizing um they could be like element. But it's just been so weaponized by say like the administration of Duterte in the Philippines. I mean, who knew that could happen? But it helped the Arab Spring, right? Arab Spring. It seems so long ago, the Arab Spring,
Yeah.
but it helped that cause, right? But then, but if it helps good causes, it can help bad causes as well. It's just, that's the nature of the platform.
Yeah. When you said older people, I knew you were referring to me. It's okay. It's
No,
all right. I
no,
just
no. My it's really millennials and up. That's me too.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I'm Gen X. I'm just on the board. I'm Gen X myself, but
Oh, yeah, okay. So maybe you're not as much a victim. But I'm talking about people who grew up in analog, right?
right. Yes. Well,
Right?
I did. Yeah, I did. And so yeah. So, and also just having worked as an entertainment journalist, if you can, apply that, I'll see things in the trades where I go, well, I know that's BS because I know that person and whatnot. But also, as you pointed out, being an independent filmmaker in particular, you need to use social media to promote your work and to connect. And so it is this power, this thing that can be used for good and for bad purposes. So we have to be mindful of that. In a way, it's almost like we need to re-educate ourselves, like how to. I mean, although so I'm kind of hard. I don't think that anyone under the age of 18 should be able to use social media. I think
That
no,
is
I'm serious. That sounds really conservative, but it's like I just think it can be used like a driver's license.
no, absolutely.
You need to be of a certain age to understand like what's possible. And we've heard of so many cases of young people that have got involved in things that are horrific. They're maybe not ready, but that may be going too far. I don't know. I've seen some fun TikTok videos. I'm not on TikTok,
Yeah,
but the
I'm not
videos
a
that turn
TikTok either. Yeah.
out. But this documentary, Maria, is just is so incredible. I don't want to ruin anything about the doc, but can you talk a little bit about like the situation and where she is now?
Well, right now, so there was a verdict recently, June 15th, she was found guilty of cyber libel, right? So this is what's been happening to her. She's had 8 cases, really attacks by the government. Some of them are cases the government has brought these cases on. Others are personal businessmen, but allied with the government, really. So she has 8 cases. So there are really 3 buckets of cases. So cyber libel on digital platforms. SEC and anti-dummy violations, accusing her of Rappler being foreign owned, and then tax evasion. So those are the 3 buckets. There are 3 buckets, but they've spawned other cases. So now she has, aside from the cyber libel that she's found guilty of, there are 7 other cases. So she's still fighting 7 other cases. She was found guilty and sentenced to between 6 months and 6 years in prison. She's fighting that. She's out on bail. They've brought it up to the Court of Appeals. If that fails, they'll bring it up to the Supreme Court. But all in all, I mean, it can be like 100 years of prison for her. Really, truly, if you count it all up, and if she's found guilty on all the charges, it's insanity.
Well, the world, I mean, she's been much honored. Time Magazine bestowed upon her an honor at an awards event that you covered in the documentary. I feel like what's happening to her is these lawsuits are just intimidation. That's all that they are.
But it's a time suck, because that's what she does her entire life. Like she's in court, she's fighting it, and she's the type of person to read every legal document that her lawyers write, every brief. She's just that kind of person. She reads it because she wants to know it truly. And so it takes up her time. So she can't do the work that she loves to do, which is being a journalist. So it's working in a way, right? It just takes up her entire life.
Well, I was the victim of a frivolous lawsuit once that was thrown out of court after it took over a year. It was such a time suck and a money suck, and I can't imagine the number of lawsuits that she's battling at the moment. Like how you even juggle a life or continue to do the work. Where are we, like, as a global community, in terms of supporting her and helping her out?
Well, the one thing is to keep her story alive, right? And to shine a light. But obviously it's very hard because so many things are happening. But there is a worldwide coalition. It's a Hold the Line coalition that people can sign up to find out what's happening. And we have the film is part of that coalition. So we just help each other, just shine a light on her and the issue of press freedom all over the world. Listen, Chris, I sit here, I go between the Philippines and the US, right? And to me, they're always been very different countries, but now they're starting to be so similar that it's like alarming, right? When I see CNN reporters being arrested on live television here in the US, it's alarming. When you see journalists being targeted in those protests, it's alarming. Like, oh my God, it's happening here too. So it's really like keeping this narrative an independent press um, alive, right? Because without an independent press, without independent journalism, I mean, democracy is not possible because they're the ones who call it out, right? Who call out abuses of power. They're not the fourth estate for nothing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's key and important.
I agree. And I assume you're going back to the Philippines, not just for your work, but also for the food, because the food, yes. I have a very good friend, Cisco, and he's Filipino, and boy, the food, yes, it's
What's your
incredible.
favorite?
What's that?
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite
Oh
Filipino?
my God. I don't know. I don't even, I just,
Adobo?
it's so there's too. I'm sorry I keep cutting out there, but the film is amazing. It's coming to virtual cinemas the first week of August, I believe August 7th or 8th. Virtual
7th.
August 7th. So you need to look up 1,000 Cuts. Is there a website people can go
Yeah.
to, social media they can follow?
Yeah. So if you go to the website 1000cuts.film, there's a list of all the theaters that are participating in the virtual cinema, right? So what is virtual cinema? Basically, you're supporting the art house in your city. There's a whole list of theaters. You choose which theater you want to support, and you buy a ticket, and you can watch it at home. But you're supporting the film and your art house.
Well, I love that because it's, I feel we're in a golden age of independent cinema right now, where maybe we've run out of choices when it comes to the mainstream studio releases, and there are so many great movies to check out, indie films like yours. And I cannot recommend this movie enough. Not only does it tackle some of the huge pressing issues of our time, but also does it in a way to make it. I feel like there's going to be a narrative version of this movie, you know. You know what I mean? Like the story is just like, if you tell someone the story, they just wouldn't believe it. And Duterte, I know from my friend's parents still live in the Philippines, and I would hear stories about him and just think, this guy just seems wacky. I mean, this is kind of crazy, you know? And you really, when you covered those the rallies, it's nuts. I mean, it's nuts what it's like over there. So I'm just so, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. And I also have to thank our sponsor. We have a sponsor, Storyblocks. If you go to storyblocks.com/film thread, you want to pursue documentary filmmaking like Ramona. There are all sorts of tools there for filmmakers. So go to storyblocks.com/film thread. But Ramona, the movie is fantastic. Did it premiere? Just correct me if I'm wrong. Did it premiere at Sundance?
Yeah, it did. So we were one of the lucky ones this year, right? We got on the wire. We premiered at Sundance, and then we were supposed to go to actually South by, and then South by got canceled, and it was like domino effect, which is really unfortunate. But yes, we did. We were still lucky, right? We're still one of the lucky ones.
I'm curious because that was one of the last film festivals. I think there was that, and then I went to Mammoth Film Festival in February, and then it was over. But
True Falls, I think, still happened, right? Berlin,
Berlin, right?
Yeah, Berlin happened. One of the, and then True Falls happened here in this country too, and then it's over.
Well, I'm curious. I know Sundance is talking about a lot of different plans of doing like virtual screenings and whatnot. I mean, maybe this is a way that it'll kind of open things up and introduce more people to indie film. But I'm curious what the reaction was at Sundance.
Amazing, Chris. Okay, so I knew it would resonate somehow, but it never really talks about Trump. It never. There's one picture of Trump and Duterte, but it's never very explicit. But the audience came up to me, and it resonated personally with them. People living in this country, right? Saying, "Oh my God, we see it. It's like it's what's happening here." And I knew then, okay, this is it's doing something. It touched something, and it's true. And I couldn't have, like you said, I couldn't have written this. Right. I mean, the story of Maria Ressa against a backdrop of midterm elections, and it's this parallel story. It's like catching lightning in a bottle, which you hope happens every time you make a documentary, and that it resonates outside the Philippines, and it's such a global story. It's even more like satisfying. But yeah, it's hitting something because of the impunity. You know what's happening here, especially against journalists and press freedom.
Well, it's interesting. I almost think in a way like science fiction movies, they're about something else that's present day, even though, it's set in another futuristic time. And I feel in your documentary it is relatable to, what we're experiencing here in the United States in a way, kind of a preview. And watching the doc, you're seeing things that are happening now with all the civil unrest, which I don't expect to get any less. I fully expect civil unrest to escalate here. It's just really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think so, but necessary, right? I mean, the system has to. It's almost like Maria calls it creative destruction. It's like you have to destroy it in order to build it up. Like,
yeah, I think. Yeah, it certainly brought up all the problems that have gone unaddressed for so long, and the polarization in our government and the failure to address these issues is also present. So I'm hoping from the dumpster fire that is 2020, we'll look forward to a much better future.
But I think so. Yeah, I'm optimistic. I choose to be optimistic. Yeah, I think
I'm with you.
Will come of it, right?
Yes, I'm optimistic too. I want good to come of it. I really want there to be the kind of change that makes us better as a country. So,
exactly.
Yeah. Ramona, this was a pleasure to talk to you. When you make your next movie, will you please come on my podcast again, please?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, I will.
Awesome. Awesome. You're amazing. Thank you for talking to us on the Film Threat podcast.